bless his heart, Ram Dass. What was it like being in his company?
It was a rude awakening because when I looked at him, I saw all the stories and layers of who I thought he was. And like, I felt like he was Jesus to me in real life. And I had all these projections. And one day when I was staring into his eyes and feeling this like holy transmission, he only had one good hand. He literally picked his hand up and just went like.
The following is a conversation with Victoria Angelhart, an embodied intimacy guide. Victoria has trained with Ram Dass and Thich Nhat Hanh. In today's digital age where everyone is getting their knowledge and information online from videos, it is more essential than ever to have safe spaces where people can come together and talk about sexuality, sensuality, and intimacy. Victoria provides a safe space for people to do just that. I believe by talking about our sexuality and experiencing it with other people in a safe way, in a safe space, with respect and consent, we can help remove and reduce the sexual shame that we've grown up with and that we put on ourselves and others. So without further ado, here is the interview with Victoria Angelhart. I love you guys. Enjoy.
Well, please just introduce yourself and tell me who you are.
So I'm Victoria Angelhart, and I'm an embodied intimacy guide, professional cuddler, and sacred musician.
Wow. What started you on this journey in a nutshell?
Ram Dass, really. Learning about loving awareness and how to be loving awareness and be in really deep presence with other people. And then also Thich Nhat Hanh and living at his monastery and learning how to hug and how to mindfully speak and listen. I really, both of those teachers impacted me. And then I was also sexually assaulted, as I shared in our class tonight. And that experience of having my boundaries violated and not having consent and not having a no really empowered me to want to keep other people from having experiences like that happen to them, and to really teach men especially how to be better with boundaries and consent so that people don't get harmed and instead we can be more in harmony with each other.
Where did you start, I guess, so if you're crossing the river to get to the other side of the shore, where did you begin, and how did you start this journey to cross that river?
Yeah, well, I was a teacher. I was doing Teach for America, and I had a really intense experience living in New York City that took me out of my bubble of having lived in Kentucky for my entire life. And I decided to end a relationship where I was engaged to an abusive man. And I also realized that I was pansexual and I couldn't marry this man for so many reasons. But when I made the decision to end the relationship and start a coming out process, it really upended my entire life, and I fell into a really deep depression. And what saved me was an Audible 2-for-1 sale. And I wanted to buy this one book on Audible, and then they had get a free book. And I found the Great Course on Mindfulness. And I had a picture of the Buddha, and I was like, oh, I've always been kind of into that. I wonder what I've always liked the picture of the Buddha. I wonder what he says. And I had done some research around Buddhism in college, but never really dove into it. And I read this book, and it completely upended my entire life. And I decided to become a really intense Buddhist meditation practitioner and to teach my students, and then move to Taiwan and do a Fulbright and learn Buddhism. And then my path has sort of flowed since then.
I feel like Buddhism is the science of the inner world, and science is the study of the outer world. Mm-hmm. So, you start to study Buddhism, and you started to experiment. How have some of these experiments manifested?
Well, the biggest one was just recognizing, as I read The Untethered Soul, as I was really deep in meditation, that I'm not the voice in my head. And like we're sitting on this couch and he talks about like you have an inner roommate that sits on the couch and talks to you all the time. And it was like suddenly I woke up and was like, I'm free of this voice because this is not me. I'm the witness. I'm the one watching. And that liberated so much of my suffering.
Do you can you remember who you were when you couldn't differentiate, yourself from your thoughts? Like, who was that person if you were talking to her today?
Well, the funny thing is I feel like actually in the last few months I had amnesia, and I really went back to that version of myself a little bit, and I did forget in a lot of ways. And so it's been almost this remembering, awakening again, like a second remembering. And when I look back on just even this recent time, it was like, wow, I conflated my identity and my ego with my big S self, sort of in IFS language. And I didn't see that there was this difference in who the truth of me really was, because the stories were so believable that it felt more comfortable to be in the stories than to let them go. And so when I think back, especially back before I ever had this experience at all, I just was an amalgam of all the things that people told me that I was. Like all the stories that my mom put on me and that my dad put on me, my religion put on me, and my school put on me. That's who I thought I was. And I didn't know that there was anything underneath.
Bless his heart, Ram Dass. What was it like being in his company?
It was a rude awakening, because when I looked at him, I saw all the stories and layers of who I thought he was, and I felt like he was Jesus to me in real life, and I had all these projections. And one day when I was staring into his eyes and feeling this holy transmission, he only had one good hand. He literally picked his hand up and just went And I was like, oh. And it was very clearly him saying I'm just a soul looking at you. Stop putting me on a pedestal. I'm just here with you. Be here with me, the real me that's here, not the projections of who you think I am and how holy you want me to be. And so that was my greatest teaching from him, was to let go of who I thought he was and the prestige that came from being in the inner circle around Ram Dass on Maui, and to just be with the essence of this being who reminded me of the truth of myself more than anything.
What is that? What's the flip coin of consent? The shadow side of consent?
Well, one of the biggest shadows is well, there's two. One of them is enduring, and it's when you say you're in consent, but you're actually not. So you want you're trying to please the other person, so you're agreeing, and they think that you're consenting, but you're actually enduring. You're actually not wanting it, but you're not.
I feel like I do that a lot in my romantic relationships. Do
you want to keep doing that?
No, but I feel it's something movies have taught me in a way that it's my responsibility to give pleasure and make the other person feel good. And so that was such a trip to ask I can't.
I know, the questions are a mind fuck. Yeah, so the question you're referring to is, how do you want to touch me? So it would be me asking you, how do you want to touch me? So then you are touching me for your pleasure.
Yes.
And it sounds like this was a big thing for you. So I'd love to hear, what are your takeaways? What did you experience? What did you learn?
I felt like a whole new paradigm. I've just never been in that. I feel the patriarchy or the reality we're in is that's actually women are more able to sit with that. And it felt like a flip of energy. And I was like, oh, I totally get how my girlfriend felt.
Wow. That's exactly why I teach this work, is I want to get men to have that understanding. I want to get women to have, like, all genders. I want us to have what the other side feels and to have more compassion and to be able to really integrate both parts, because we both need to give and we need to receive. We both need to take and we need to allow. The traditional roles of the male as the giver and the female as the receiver, when you start learning things like the Wheel of Consent, get really flipped on their heads, and there's so much more empowerment that comes when the person who is receiving the touch is getting the touch for their pleasure, just as much as when the person who's giving the touch gives the touch for their pleasure. And when that happens, everybody is feeling more pleasure and everybody wins, but only when the other person who's receiving the touch or allowing the touch is actually truly an embodied yes. And that was the other thing. I'm curious what you felt when you were allowing someone to take your body and to feel for their own pleasure within your domain.
It was like, it was almost as if they were listening to themselves, and by listening to themselves, they were even like listening to me more without needing words. It's like this human intelligence just channeled through them, and they knew like what needed to be touched. Yeah.
The word I would put for that is attunement. When we really slow down and we listen to ourselves from the inside out instead of from the top down, and we put our attention and our awareness on another person, we can also listen from the inside out to what their bodies are saying to us. Our bodies are always in communication with each other, but we don't often get quiet enough to hear what they're trying to say. And practices like the ones that I offer in embodied intimacy work are sometimes people's first glance into what's possible when you really get into that deep attunement. And it sounds like you got to that place tonight.
I'll be doing Vipassana for 10 days soon, so I'll have the silence.
Wow, yeah. I've done several Vipassanas, and my question that I would pose is, during Vipassana, how aware of your body can you be when it's in complete stillness, and how much can you love the pain?
I will ponder that question when I'm sitting there, sitting for 10 days.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons that I teach embodied intimacy, is because I started out as a mindfulness teacher before I did anything with intimacy, and that the Vipassanas really influence a lot of the way that I teach, because when you get that quiet and that still for that long, you know yourself on such a deeper level than in your day-to-day life. And when you come out on the other side, you have this inner stillness, this inner peace, and also this like vast love that comes out of you that you can then translate into your relationships, so that you are more embodied and you are more connected to yourself, because you can only be as connected to another person as you are to yourself.
So I have a question for you. I'm taking this girl out on a date, and it's nerve-wracking because it's only been a month since I've broken up, but I'm not going into it with the same, like, it's almost like as if like I don't really want in a relationship. So how do I come in integrity and like show up in a way that like I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Well, my question to you is, what is your intention with this date? Like, do you just want to hook up? Do you want companionship? It sounds like you're not seeking a relationship. So I think that any time that you're...
Curiosity.
So curiosity about the other person, or curiosity to know more about yourself, or curiosity to have an experience?
Curiosity to have an experience in a date, like dating again after not dating for a year, like just to date again.
I think the best thing that you can do is to be very clear on your date. Hey, I don't know where this is going to lead, and my intention is just to be really present with you and to stay in the question of what is this, and to enjoy ourselves as best we can without trying to make it mean anything, because we don't have to figure out where it's going on the first date.
I love that so much. So just from the very beginning, like being like, I don't know, I'm not sure what this is.
Yeah. And
I'm
also,
okay with that.
Yeah, and also being clear when you get clarity. Like, hey, you know, it seems like we are better friends, or it seems like I am really feeling like maybe this is just a friends with benefits situation, or I think I would like to take you on more dates and pursue potentially having a relationship. As the clarity comes to you, being in conversation and seeing, like, how do you feel? Like, what's alive for you? What are your intentions? I think the more clarity we can bring up front, the easier it is on all of our hearts.
So bring clarity up front.
Yeah.
I love it. That's like such a great piece right there. Yeah. And